तस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुं श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवम् साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्ता राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी कृष्णानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। The next following mantras are for the glorification of Lord Ram. पूजन्ति राम रामेति मधुरं मधुराक्षरम् आरुह्य कविता शाखां वन्दे वाल्मीकिर्कोकिलं। वाल्मीकिर्मुनिसिंहस्य कवितावनचारिणः शृण्वन् रामकथानादं पौनयाति परां गतिम्। यः पिबन् सततं रामचरितामृतसागरम् अतृप्ताष्टं मुनिं वन्दे प्राचेतशामकल्मषम्। यत्र यत्र रघुनाथकीर्तनं तत्र तत्र कृतमास्तकाञ्जलिं बाष्पवारि परिपूर्णलोचनं मारुतिं नमत राक्षसान्तकम्। वेदवेद्ये परे पुंसि जाते दशरथात्मजे वेदस्प्राचेतशादाश्रित् साक्षात् रामायणात्मना। So if you want to repeat after me, Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram। Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram। Shri Ram Jai Ram Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram। Krishna, everybody. I would like to thank Garuda Prabhu and Ajita Prabhu for giving me this opportunity to glorify Lord Ram in front of their lordships. Actually, the glories of Lord Ram are unlimited. There's a very popular saying which goes Hari Ananta Hari Katha Ananta, which means that the Lord is unlimited and his pastimes are even more unlimited. So, given that, it's kind of hard to actually summarize all of his pastimes in 1 hour, but I'll do my best to cover at least some important pastimes. So Lord Ram, as you would all know, is quite popular not only in the Indian subcontinent region, but also all across Southeast Asia. Like, for example, if you go to places like Indonesia and Thailand, for example, they have inscriptions on their walls and in their temples about Lord Ram, and they have a whole Ramayana. In fact, even the Buddhist and the Jain literatures actually talk about Lord Ram as well. They mention him, they present him in a different angle and in a different light, but he is still mentioned. And he is also, not only is he famous, but unfortunately, he's also subject to some kind of controversy as well. So that's generally what happens if someone becomes quite famous, and if someone is very famous all throughout the three worlds, there will be envious people who also find points in him to criticize him as well. But despite all of those, the Ramayana has been going on for millions and millions of years. Actually, we are currently, if we look at the grand time scale, we are currently in the 51st year of Lord Brahma. In that, we are in the 7th Manvantra, and in that, we are in the 51st Chaturyuga, essentially. 28th Kalpa, and then 51st Chaturyuga. The Valmiki Ramayana, which Srila Prabhupada said is the most authentic form of Ramayana that is present amongst all the various 1,000 different types of Ramayans, actually occurred in the 24th Kalpa. This is according to Jiva Goswami, and this is mentioned in the Laghu Bhagavatamrita. So actually, Lord Ram's pastimes took place a very, 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 very long time ago, if you can imagine. So the fact that the Ramayana has stood the test of time goes to show how popular of a character Lord Ram must have been. Of course, Lord Ram is none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but his pastimes are also quite sweet. Now, many people, I'm assuming most of you would know the general overview of Ramayana in terms of the whole story, the main characters. So I won't go into much detail about the whole story and the whole pastime of Lord Ram. There are certain pastimes I wanted to discuss which actually bring out the essence of Ramayana. So if we look at Ramayana, and if I mention this to you, you may not believe me, but the actual central point of Ramayana, or the central teaching of Ramayana, is that we must surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now you may ask me, how is this true? Like, why should I believe you? There are so many things in the Ramayana. There's so many things that are mentioned in the Ramayana, like, Ram getting exiled, etc., and then Sita being kidnapped by Ravana. There are so many different pastimes mentioned. So why should you believe me when I say that Saranagati, or essentially surrender unto the Lord, is the central point of Ramayana? The reason is, let's look at the overview, or let's look at the outline of Ramayana. And to do that, we will actually initially look at the outline of Mahabharata. So I'm sure all of you know about the Mahabharata. And in Mahabharata, what happens is you have the whole story essentially building up. There's tremblings of an impending war. And essentially, both sides are trying to avoid the war. They're trying many different tactics, but ultimately the war is inevitable. And the Mahabharata finishes with a large war at the end, where the Pandavas and their army kill the Kauravas and their whole army, essentially. And this is orchestrated by Lord Krishna. Now, if we look at the structure of the Mahabharata, you will notice, as I mentioned, that there are tremblings of war, and then the climax, it finishes right at the war, and then you have the end of the story. And what's the most important aspect of Mahabharata, or what's the most important teaching in Mahabharata? It's the Bhagavad Gita. And where does Bhagavad Gita occur? Bhagavad Gita occurs right before the war, just when the war is about to start, when everyone's interest is right on point, because the war is essentially meant to be the climax. That's when Lord Krishna speaks the Bhagavad Gita. And that's when everyone is focused right on Lord Krishna, essentially. So similarly, and what's the main teaching in the Bhagavad Gita? In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna at the end says, Sarva dharman parityaja mam ekam sharanam vraja. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo moksha ishyami masocha. So Krishna says that you surrender unto me and I will protect you, you do not fear. So that is considered the main teaching in the Mahabharata, which occurs right before the war. Now, what happens in Ramayana? Ramayana is actually similar if you look at it. You have the whole pastime of Lord Ram occurring, and it's all trembling. There's tremblings of war happening all the way throughout. The climax is ultimately building up. So, as you all would know, Lord Ram was born along with his three other brothers, and then they all get married at the age of, I don't know how many of you know, but Lord Ram was actually at the age of 12 when he got married, and Sita was at the age of 6. So back in the day, people got married when they were quite young. And he lived in Ayodhya, he lived in his country for about 12 years or so. And then while he was at the age of 25, due to some unfortunate circumstances, he was exiled into the forest. And while he was exiled, he stayed in the forest for 13 years, 14 years. And in the 13th year, Mother Sita gets abducted by Ravana, who is considered to be the biggest demon of that time. So he abducts Mother Sita and he takes Mother Sita to Lanka. And while Mother Sita is in Lanka, Lord Ram is essentially preparing for a war. He liaises with one of his monkey friends or Vanara friends whose name is Sugriva. And while they're liaising about the war, essentially they build a huge, what do you call it, like a bridge or a causeway all the way from the southernmost tip of India all the way to Lanka. And essentially the war happens, and then Lord Ram rescues Sita and he brings her back to Ayodhya. So this is, in general, this is the whole of Ramayana summarized. But you will see that just before the war, there was one very important event that happened, which actually describes the essence of Valmiki Ramayana, or which essentially describes why the whole pastime of Lord Ram occurred. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuthanam adharmasya tadatmanam shrajamyaham. So Lord says that whenever there is a decline in religion, that's when I descend to establish the principles of religion. But Jiva Goswami in his Preeti Sandarbha, he brings out this point. He says that, the Lord doesn't really need to come himself to establish the principles of religion. The real religion that Lord Krishna is talking about when he says this verse is the religion of prema or love. That's the dharma that Lord Krishna is talking about. And this is the dharma that Lord Ram and Lord Krishna and all of his incarnations actually come to establish. And that's the main consideration. And that's the main reason why they appear in this material world. So this one pastime I will discuss, it talks about surrender unto the Lord. So what is this pastime? So this pastime occurs when, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the intimate story of Ramayana, but does everyone know what happened when Hanuman came into Lanka and then he burned the whole of Lanka and then he went back? I'm assuming most of you would at least know of that part. So essentially, Hanuman comes, he destroys the whole of Lanka, and then he goes back and reports to Lord Ram. And when he goes and reports back to Lord Ram becomes so indebted to Hanuman that he says that, I have so many things that I could give you. I could make you the king of this whole world. I could make you the king of this whole universe. I could make you Brahma. But he says, none of those things would be befitting what you have done for me. He says that if I give you any of these things, it would be like me giving you a little chocolate for a huge task that you have accomplished for me. So he says, that's why I have nothing to give you but myself. And then he embraces Hanuman. And then he says that there are three different types of servants that the Lord can have. And this is where Srila Prabhupada also talks about the three different classes of servants: the first class servant, the second class servant, and the third class servant, essentially. The third class servant, Lord Ram says, is one who, when he's given a task, he thinks in his mind, oh, I've been given a task to complete. Somehow or the other, I need to complete it. I have so many other tasks to do as well, but because my spiritual master has asked me to do something, I probably should do it. So this is the third class servant. The second class servant, however, is keen to fulfill the orders of his spiritual master. He says, okay, my spiritual master has given me some kind of instruction, so I should fulfill them to the best of my ability. So he fulfills the instructions of his spiritual master. The first class servant, however, does not only fulfill the orders of his spiritual master, but he goes beyond. He says, what can I do so that my master will become pleased and happy? What can I do to satisfy my master completely? So then he goes above and beyond his ability to go and serve his spiritual master. So this, Lord Ram says, is the quality of a first-class servant, and this was what was seen in the case of Hanuman. Because Hanuman was asked to go and find out the whereabouts of Mother Sita in Lanka. But not only did he find out the whereabouts of Mother Sita, he also essentially killed 7 out of 18 of Ravana's sons. He became captured by Ravana, and then he essentially, while he was captured, he discovered the insides and outsides of Ravana's fort. And then essentially, when he was coming back, he burned the whole of Lanka, instilling great fear in the heart of Ravana. So Hanuman accomplished not just one, but he accomplished 4 tasks, and even though he was only asked to accomplish one of them. So that's why Lord Ram was very much pleased with Hanuman. So when Hanuman comes back, Lord Ram discusses this. And while this is being discussed, in the meantime, there's something else that's happening in Lanka. So when the whole of Lanka has been destroyed completely and it's been burned to ashes, at that point, Ravana is looking outside his palace and he's very, very depressed because he's thinking that Hanuman is just one monkey. And Hanuman warned that there are thousands of monkeys like this in Lord Rama's army. So he was thinking, if one monkey can instill so much damage in the kingdom, what will 1,000 monkeys do? So at this point, he was really reconsidering his decisions. He was thinking whether or not he should really keep Mother Sita in the palace. So while he was thinking this, his younger brother Vibhishana comes up to him. So Vibhishana, as you would know from the previous, or from the story of Lord Ram, he was the only one who stood out for Hanuman. When Hanuman was captured by Ravana, at that point, Vibhishana speaks in Hanuman's favor. He says that, you should not mistreat a messenger who's come from the other side, and we should give him respect, etc. So Vibhishana was the only one who was standing up for Hanuman. So Vibhishana, when he sees that his brother is depressed, he goes up to his brother Ravana and he says that, I see you're depressed, and if you will consider my humble suggestion is we should return Mother Sita back to Lord Ram. He says the reason for this is, as you can understand, one monkey has instilled so much chaos, 1,000 monkeys will not stop until they've destroyed every single one of us. So he says it's in our best interest we give Mother Sita back. So Ravana was actually really considering this. But while he was considering this, his other ministers, and especially his younger son, whose name was Meghnath or Indrajit, he became very angry and he started abusing Vibhishana. He started saying that Vibhishana is a traitor and he doesn't care about Ravana's reputation because he wants Ravana to look like essentially a fool in front of Lord Ram. He wants to make Ravana look like a coward in front of Lord Ram. So he became very angry and he started abusing Vibhishana. So at this point, Ravana was thinking, and Ravana's mind obviously was, very much attracted to Sita. So he decided to listen to his son's words rather than heed Vibhishana's good advice. So then he also starts saying, he says that, yeah, actually, the only reason we lost was because we were not prepared. If we were prepared, then yeah, sure, we would have definitely destroyed Hanuman. So, that's how his intelligence was ruined as well. So as he was saying this, then then Ravana becomes very proud of himself, and then he starts abusing Vibhishana as well. He starts saying that, I have looked after you since you were a young child, and look at you, you are such a traitor that you're going to betray me. You don't care about my fame. You want to see me being defamed in the entire 3 worlds. So he becomes very angry, and he says, you're asking me to give up Sita, but you're not asking Lord Ram to surrender. So therefore, you are the biggest traitor in this entire universe, he says. And then he says, from today onwards, I'm not going to look after you. And having said this, he kicked Vibhishana in the chest and he threw him down the alleyway. Vibhishana did not take any offense because Vibhishana was a pure devotee. So he essentially walks up to his brother, he embraces his foot and he says, please heed my good advice. Your sons are not giving you good advice. You really need to consider the advice that I'm giving you. It's in your best benefit. It's in your best favor. Please listen to me. But Ravana would not have any of that. So then at that point, after Ravana rejected Vibhishana, at that point, Vibhishana says that, okay, my duty here is now complete because my job was to give you good advice. But you do not seem to take good advice. So I cannot remain in this place any longer. So essentially, Vibhishana picked up his mace, and along with him, 4 of his ministers also gather with him, and they also rise up into the sky, and then they say that now, because you have rejected me as my master, I am going to go and take shelter of Lord Ram. So essentially, he goes along with his 4 ministers, and they cross the ocean, and they want to take shelter at the feet of Lord Ram. So now this is an interesting event that will happen here, because what happens is when Vibhishana was just a bit, like just a few miles away, he could see a huge army of monkeys gathered all the way down across near the beach, essentially. And over there, in the middle of that huge army, he could see two very resplendent personalities. It's described that, Vibhishana, as he was seeing them, he could see that these two personalities had very broad chests, they had very stout shoulders, stout arms, their faces were almost like the color of the moon, and their countenance was very beautiful. They had very beautiful silky and curly hair, which were, although they were matted, they looked quite beautiful. And the way they wore their clothes was very, very attractive. So, and the way they held their bows in their hands was just completely amazing. So when Vibhishana saw this from a distance, he became completely enchanted with the beauty of Lord Ram and Lakshman. And it said that he started developing ecstatic symptoms. His hair started to stand on end, tears started to flow from his eyes, his voice started to choke, there was a chill running down his spine, and he was almost about to faint just looking at this beautiful sight of Lord Ram surrounded by his intimate devotees. So as he was seeing this, he composed himself. He said, no, 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 I have a mission here to accomplish. So then he goes, and as he's approaching Lord Ram, the monkey army sees that there are 5 demons coming in the sky. So then they become very apprehensive, of course, because they were not expecting to see any demons. So when they see these demons, they become very angry. And Sugriva, who is the head of all of these monkeys, he becomes very angry, and he orders his fellow monkeys to essentially pick up their weapons so that they can kill Vibhishana and his fellow Rakshasas. So while they're just about to kill them, Vibhishana comes down to the ground and he falls at Sugriva's feet. And when he falls at Sugriva's feet, he says, I'm here, I'm actually Vibhishana, I am the brother of Ravana. I tried to give my brother good advice, but he would not take good advice. So he has rejected me, and I have come here to take the shelter of Lord Ram. So can you please give my proposal to Lord Ram, and can he kindly accept my proposal of surrender or Sharanagati? So Sugriva was a bit startled. He was like, I was not expecting a demon to come here and surrender. People back in the day were very straightforward. They didn't really have too much diplomacy or like politics and stuff. So he was a bit startled. He was like, why is a demon coming and trying to join Lord Ram? So, but nonetheless, he was very suspicious. So he goes up to Lord Ram and he says that, Lord Ram, Vibhishana, the brother of Ravana, has come and he is trying to take shelter at your lotus feet. However, I don't trust him. I think he has come here to bring you some harm, and I think he really needs to be killed. So Lord Ram says, actually, before you do anything, I want to hear all of your opinions. He says, I want to hear what we should do with this Vibhishana. So mind you, Vibhishana is still standing out there. He's waiting for the opinion of Lord Ram and Lord Ram's decision while all of this is happening, and he can hear everything that's happening. So at that point, when Lord Ram essentially, this is actually true democracy, because Lord Ram did not just want to act, he wanted to give the people or the monkeys in his army a voice. So that's what he does. He gives all of them a voice. He says, okay, I want the big leaders to start speaking. So then Angada, who is one of the big leaders in the army, he says that, yeah, Lord Ram, look, he may or may not be trustworthy, I'm not sure, but the one way we can find out whether or not he's trustworthy is if we give him a task to complete. Why don't we give him a task to complete and see if he completes this task properly? And if he completes this task properly, then we will admit him into our army. Otherwise, we'll just kill him. And then at that point, one of the other monkeys, whose name is Sharabha, he says, no, 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 actually, that's not right. He says, we can't do that. We can't trust him with some kind of job. He says, what we should do is we should actually admit him into the army, and then we should have spies observing him. Because if we give him a task, he will know that he's being tested. So he will perform the task properly. So we won't actually know whether or not he is truly loyal towards Lord Ram. So what we should do is admit him into the army, and then once he's admitted, we'll observe him. So while that's happening, Then Jambavan, who's the big bear incarnation of Lord Brahma, he speaks and he says that actually, no, I don't think any of these suggestions are correct. He says, look, even if you try to observe him, he may still deceive you. So he says, I don't think that this is the right time that he should have come to seek shelter. He says, we were just about to we were just about to cross the ocean and enter into Lanka. And he says, we were just about to kill Ravana. So why is this Vibhishana coming at this time? This is not the right time he should have come. There's no reason for him to be afraid. So I think he's come here just to deceive us, and we should just kill him. No questions considered, no options considered. Don't give him any chance. Just kill him straight away. Now, while this was happening, everyone was just thinking, okay, what do we do next? What do we do next? But actually, there's a side story from this. So, like, as you all know, Srila Ramanujacharya's appearance day was 4 or 5 days ago. And one day, Ramanujacharya was reciting this particular pastime to his disciples. And as he was reciting this pastime, one of his disciples, whose name was Parashara Bhatta, he started to have tears in his eyes, and he immediately left the lecture and just went outside. Now, Ramanujacharya was very much surprised, and he said that Parashar Bhatta has never ever cried in his life, and more than that, he's never left a lecture in his life. So he was very much concerned. So he himself stopped the lecture, went outside, got Parashar Bhatta and brought him in, and he says, "Why are you crying?" And then at that point, Parashar Bhatta says, "My lord, what you're describing seems to me so painful." He says, Vibhishana came in with such good intentions. He was such a pure devotee in his heart, but yet he was being criticized by all the devotees. Someone wants to test him, someone wants to observe him, someone wants to just kill him without even giving him a fair trial. He says, if this is the case, he says, I am such a vile person. He says, I've committed so many sins. I've committed thousands of offenses at the feet of Lord Hari. He says, if I have done so much, how will the Lord accept my surrender? Like, if Vibhishana, who was so pure, is being subjected to so much cruelty, how much more cruelty will I be subjected to? Because I'm much more of a vile person than what Vibhishana could have been. So he started crying. So he says, what hope is there for any of us? So then at that point, Ramanujacharya got his disciple up, he wiped his tears, and he said, Parashara Bhatta, he says, do you have faith that the Lord will accept my surrender? So he says, yes, of course, the Lord will accept your surrender because you're a pure devotee. So he says, okay, if you think the Lord will accept my surrender, don't you think that when I go back to the spiritual world, I will vouch for you and I will recommend you to the Supreme Lord? And then don't you think the Lord will accept you? So then he became a bit more pacified, and he said that, yes, okay, now I'm a bit more pacified, that I have some hope that the Lord will accept me at some point. So, sorry, this was just a side story that just came to my mind. But essentially, you can see the torments that Vibhishana was going through at the hands of the monkeys. So then at that point, Lord Rama did not say anything. He was just smiling. So then he looks at Hanuman, and he asks Hanuman, okay, what's your opinion? You've been very quiet for the last few, like while everyone else was speaking. So then at that point, Hanuman, actually the way Hanuman could have responded and the way Hanuman did respond was quite different. Hanuman, essentially what he started to do was he started to point out faults in the arguments of the other people. So he said that, someone has recommended that we give Vibhishana a test to perform. He says, I don't think that's the right way to go, because he says anyone can, like if someone knows they're being observed, then they will perform the test properly. So he said, I don't think that suggestion is correct. Then the next suggestion he says was that we should have spies observing him. So then he says, I don't think that suggestion is correct either, because if someone has spies observing them, then they're going to act properly anyways. So there's no point having spies observing them. Then he says the other argument was that, he has not come at the right time. And then Hanuman asks, what is the right time then? If you're saying that there should be a right time for surrender, then my question is there really a right time for surrender? He says, according to my opinion, he says, whenever anyone seeks shelter at the Supreme Lord's feet, that itself is the right time for surrender. And then he says that one of the other monkeys said that his body language was not correct. But he says, in my opinion, from my study of Vibhishana's body language, I think his body language was perfect. I think he genuinely wants to surrender onto the Supreme Lord. Now, the interesting thing is, Hanuman could have recited whatever happened in Lanka. Hanuman could have said that, when I was in Lanka, Vibhishana was the only one who stood out for me, and Vibhishana was the only one who stood up against Ravana and defended me. But Hanuman didn't say any of that. And there's a huge reason for that, which I will discuss towards the end of this pastime. Hopefully, it'll make more sense to you why Hanuman did not. Because if Hanuman had said that, it would be a clear shut case. Like, Vibhishana helped Hanuman, so Vibhishana deserves Lord Ram's shelter. But Hanuman was very, very, very intelligent. He did not say any of that. And I will explain to you the reason. So when Lord Ram heard Hanuman speak like this, Lord Ram also smiled. He knew what Hanuman was doing and why Hanuman said what he did. So then Lord Ram gave his own opinion. Lord Ram said that, many of you think that Vibhishana has come here to cause me harm, and many of you think that he will somehow deceive me and betray me, etc. He says, but according to the rules of Dharma, if anyone seeks shelter at anyone's feet, you are meant to give protection to that person, even if that person is going to harm you in the future. Now, this was seen in the Kshatriya kings back in the day. Like, for example, there was one Kshatriya king called Rana Pratap. And Rana Pratap knew that when one of the, it's described that one of the Mlecha invaders tried to seek shelter at his feet, the Mlecha leader only sought shelter at his feet because he knew that if I seek shelter at his feet, he will give me protection. And when he gives me protection, I will stab him in the back. And that's exactly what happened. So Rana Pratap, because he was a man of dharma, he gave protection to this Mlecha king. And this Mlecha king in next few years stabbed Rana Pratap in the back and took his kingdom. So Lord Ram, and that's why the monkeys were also concerned, because this could very well have happened. But Lord Ram says that according to the rules of dharma, I am duty bound to give him protection. He says if I don't give him protection, everyone will ridicule me. He says that in our tradition, in the Solar dynasty, in the Surya Vansha, he says all kings have given protection to anyone who has sought their shelter. So he says even if Vibhishana has come here with harmful intents, I should still give him protection. So Lord Ram says, in this instant, I will recite two stories. So Lord Ram then recites two stories, one of a dove and one of a monkey. So he says that once upon a time, there was a dove. The story of the dove actually also comes in Srimad Bhagavatam in the 9th canto, if you read that section, essentially. So essentially what happens is, once upon a time, there was a dove couple that were living, so essentially pigeon couple that were living on a tree. And what happens is, one day a hunter comes, and this hunter captures the female bird and he takes it away. Now the male bird is trying to attack the hunter to free the female bird, but his attempts are unsuccessful. So the male bird is just sitting on his tree when he notices that it starts to rain. And when it's raining, he notices that the hunter with the female bird comes back to the same tree. And when he comes back to the same tree, the female bird looks at the male bird and she says that you should understand that this hunter has come and sought shelter at this tree. So he is seeking shelter or protection at this tree. So even though he has kidnapped me and he has done a huge deal of harm to you, you must serve him as your guest. So go and get him some food, essentially. So then the bird, essentially what he does is he goes around, picks up some fruits and flowers and stuff and just drops it at the base of the hunter. But the hunter's hunger is not satisfied. So then the female bird looks at the male bird and says, you know what to do next. So then what the bird does is he brings out small twigs, he puts them on the ground, he lights a fire. Now don't ask me how he lit a fire, but he lights a fire. And then essentially what he does is he jumps into the fire himself. And then he says that hopefully my meat will satisfy his hunger. So now the whole point here was that because the hunter, even though he came in with cruel intentions, sought the shelter of the male bird at the tree, the male bird was obliged to help him, essentially. So this was one story that Lord Ram recited. There was another story that Lord Ram recited, and this one was of the monkey. This I don't think is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. But essentially what happens is, once upon a time, there was a monkey who was living on a tree. And what happens is, there's a tiger who is chasing a man. And this man essentially sees this tree, he climbs up onto the tree, and then he goes and asks the monkey for protection. He says, can you please protect me against this tiger? So then the monkey says, yeah, sure, because you're seeking shelter at my place, I will give you protection. So then the tiger comes along, and then the tiger looks at the monkey and he says, hey, look, I'm not interested in your meat. Like, your meat doesn't taste that great. I want that man's meat. So he says, what I want you to do is just push him down and I will leave you. Like, I will spare your life. So then at that point, the monkey says, no, I can't do that because he has sought shelter at my feet, or sorry, at my tree, so I can't push him down. So then the tiger was thinking, well, I'm hungry, I need to eat. So he waits for the monkey to fall asleep. So while the monkey is sleeping, he looks at the man and he says, shh, hey, the monkey is sleeping, just push him down. I just need something to eat. And if my hunger is satisfied, I'll go away. So he says, the man thinks, yeah, that's a good idea. So he just pushes the monkey down. Yeah. And then when the monkey falls down, the tiger looks at the monkey and he says, look, this is the guy you were trying to protect. This guy stabbed you in the back. He essentially, even though you were trying to protect him, he threw you down. He says, look, I'm genuinely telling you, I'm not interested in your meat. Your meat doesn't taste great. Now, why don't you go back up and throw me that man? Because now you know this guy is not trustworthy. So, yeah, please throw him down. So the monkey goes up and then he looks at the tiger and he says, nah, sorry, I can't throw that man down. He says, because this man has sought shelter at my feet, even if this guy is an absolute rascal, I can't give him up because he has sought shelter at my feet. So Lord Ram essentially was pointing out that even if Vibhishana betrays him or does anything that might harm him, he says, there's no way that I can't give him protection. Then Lord Ram says, do you know one of my ancestors? One of my ancestors' name was Shibi Maharaj. I don't know how many of you have heard of Shibi or the story of King Shibi, but King Shibi was a very great king. And this king, one day he was sitting in his kingdom and he was passing judgments when he noticed that there was a pigeon that flies all the way into his kingdom. And this pigeon essentially fell down at the feet of Shibi Maharaj and asks for protection. He says that, can you please give me protection? Shibi says, yes, I will give you protection. Don't fear. At that point, one eagle comes as well. And then this eagle says, I want to eat this pigeon. And then the king says, no, but this pigeon has sought shelter at my feet, so I can't give him up. He says, well, if you don't give up this pigeon, then I'm going to starve and I'm going to die. And the sin of my death will essentially affect you after your life. So you need to feed me as well. So then at that point, Shibi Maharaj says, okay, that's fine. What I will do is, I can't give up the life of this pigeon. So what I will do is, he brings out a huge weighing scale. And on one side, he puts the pigeon. And on the other side, he takes a knife and essentially like chops out his flesh from his thigh and starts putting it on the weighing scale. And he says that the weight equal to the weight of the pigeon is something that I will give to the eagle. So this was the glory of Lord Ram's ancestors. So Lord Ram was saying that Shibi, my ancestor, was willing to give up his own life to protect a pigeon. So he says, then why should I not give protection to Vibhishana? So Vibhishana, even though he may be a demon, I still have to give him protection. So then at this point, Sugriva is thinking he really doesn't want Vibhishana to join the army. Like, it happens, like if there's a newcomer in the company, then people try to like get him out as quickly as possible. So that's exactly what was happening here as well. So Vibhishana then, Sugriva then plays tricks and he says, Lord Ram, actually, you know how you said that you like to protect all of your devotees? He said, I'm worried that if Vibhishana comes into the army, then he might harm your devotees. So you see, like he's playing very cool tricks. And then he's saying that, if Vibhishana might harm Lakshman, and if something happens to Lakshman, what will you go and say to Sumitra when you go back? Or if he harms me, for example, then what will you go and say to Tara, my wife? So he says, that's why don't admit Vibhishana. He was saying that. And then Lord Ram gets very angry. And then he looks at Vibhishana and he says, he looks at Sugriva and he says that, do you think that I need all of you to fight the war against Ravana? He says, the only reason Ravana has not died yet is because I have not decided that he should die yet. He says, if I wish to kill Ravana, I don't need any of you to protect me. He says, with the tip of my little finger, I can kill Ravana while sitting here on the shore of India. I can kill him right there in Lanka. So he says, you don't know my power. You're saying that Vibhishana will harm me or harm Lakshmana or harm you, but don't you know of my power? He's saying that essentially you do not have to fear at all about Vibhishana bringing any kind of harm to anyone. So then at that point, Vibhishana, at that point, Sugriva gives up. He's like, okay, I've tried all my arguments. So then he says to Lord Ram, okay, what is your final decision at that point? So then at that point, Lord Ram says, there's a huge section in that Yuddhakan chapter, which talks about how Lord Ram is willing to give protection. So Lord Ram says that whenever anyone comes to seek my protection, you don't even have to be favorable to me. You just come and say, I am yours, and I will give you protection. He says, okay, maybe you don't even have to say it. All you have to do is just come to me and fold your hands in front of me. It doesn't matter what's in your heart. Just fold your hands in front of me and say, I am yours. I will give you protection. He says, actually, you don't even have to do that. He says, all you have to do is just look into my direction. And if you look at my direction and bow your head down, I will give you protection. He says, actually, no, you don't even have to do that. He says, all you have to do is just look into my direction. Just look at me. He says, if you look at me, I will give you protection. So then Lord Ram speaks the most famous verse, which is the equivalent of 1866 in Bhagavad Gita. He says, Sakrudeva prapannaya tavasmiti chayachate abhayam sarva bhutebhyo dadami etad vritam mama. So Lord Ram says that whoever comes and seeks shelter at my feet even once, let him be the most vile or the most cruel person in this whole universe. He says, if someone comes and seeks shelter at my feet even once, I will give him protection throughout his life. He says, this is my vow, and I'm making this vow in front of all of you. So Lord Ram speaks this statement of encouragement as encouragement for everyone. So now the question might come, like, why did Hanuman not... so now to tie it back, why did Hanuman not give a clear case? Why did Hanuman not say that, Vibhishana helped me? The reason that Hanuman did not say that Vibhishana helped me was because he wanted to show the whole world that Lord Ram's giving of Sharanagati, or the Lord Ram's giving of protection, is unconditional. You don't have to do anything to deserve the protection or the Sharanagati of Lord Ram. Lord Ram, because the question may be raised that maybe I have to stand up against my kinsmen, maybe I have to stand up against society, and only then will Lord Krishna accept me, or maybe only then will Lord Ram accept me. But that's why Hanuman didn't say any of that, because he wanted to show that you don't have to do any of that, and you can still go and surrender onto the feet of Lord Ram, and Lord Ram will still give you protection. So that is why Hanuman did not speak that, and that is explained by Srila Govindacharya in his commentary on the Ramayana. So the commentaries on Ramayana are also quite deep, which help us look at what's happening. So when Lord Ram made this famous statement, at this point, all the monkeys started cheering. They were all very happy, all excited that we're going to have a new member into the army. So then at that point, Lord Ram looks at Sugriva and he says that, Sugriva, because Vibhishana had sought my shelter through you, I'm going to give you the responsibility of going and conveying this good news to Sugriva, to Vibhishana, that he is accepted into the army. So now you see, like, Sugriva has to change his emotions, and he has to essentially change his attitude. And then he goes back to Vibhishana, and then he says, Vibhishana, congratulations, you're admitted into the army of Lord Ram. And then Vibhishana becomes so ecstatic, and then both of them, Vibhishana and Sugriva, embrace each other. And then Vibhishana goes on to Lord Ram, and then he recites his whole story. He says that, I gave up my whole family. Like, Vibhishana has a daughter and he has a wife, and he left them in Lanka, even though he knows that Ravana is there, and Ravana's cruel Rakshasis are tormenting Sita. They can kill his wife and his daughter at any time. But Vibhishana's faith in Lord Ram is so high that he knows that if he seeks shelter at the feet of Lord Ram will definitely protect not only him, but also his family. So that's why he goes and he says this to Lord Ram, and Lord Ram becomes very, very pleased. And Lord Ram also embraces Vibhishana, and he gives him a garland to show him that he is accepted into the army as well. But then what does Lord Ram do afterwards? Lord Ram immediately engages Vibhishana in his service. And what service does he give him? He gives him the most harsh service. So, I mean, you might think that, Vibhishana surrendered, that's great, now everything's happy. But actually, that was just the beginning. So then Lord Ram asks Vibhishana, he says, now I need to infiltrate into the barracks of of Ravana. So now I need you to tell me all the secrets inside and outside of Ravana. So now tell me all of his strengths, all of his weaknesses, everything, how I can destroy him. So then at that point, Vibhishana says, well, the first task you have to do is you have to construct a bridge and get over the other side so that you can, fight in Lanka. Now here, another interesting incident happens, right? So what happens is, he says that, okay, how do I build this bridge? So then Vibhishana says, well, this ocean god who is standing in the middle, he is one of your ancestors. So why don't you pray to him for 3 days, and then he will help you build a bridge and, get over the other side. So then at that point, Lord Ram, like, if you have to pray to someone, how do you normally pray? Like, you would sit down, you would fold your hands, and you would maybe meditate, or you would close your eyes, you would try to think about that person, etc. That's how normal people would meditate, right? But what does Lord Ram do? Lord Ram actually takes out the kusha grass, he makes a nice mat, and he lies down on it with his hand like that. And then, yeah, he just closes his eyes and then just goes into ecstasy. And everyone was looking and they were like, what's happening? We don't know. And apparently, Lord Ram was praying to the ocean god in that way. And 3 days, 3 nights pass, nothing happens. After this, Lord Ram becomes very angry. He looks at Lakshmana and he says, Lakshmana, bring me my bow and arrow. He says, this ocean god has become very, very proud and arrogant. He doesn't think that he's worthy enough to help me. I will show him who's the real boss. So he says, bring me my bow and arrow. So as Lakshmana bought his bow and arrow, and Lord Ram essentially loaded the bow on the arrow and was about to fire the arrow, the ocean started to boil. And as the ocean started to boil, all the living entities within the ocean were starting to essentially feel a lot of distress. And then this was when the arrow was not even fired. So you can imagine what would have happened if he had actually fired the arrow. So then at that point, the ocean god comes out and he folds his hand in front of Lord Ram and he says, oh Lord, please forgive me. I did not really recognize who you really were. And then he says that, and then Lord Ram says, well, I'm a man of my word. If I've pulled up my arrow and onto my bow, it needs to be fired. It can't go in vain. So where should I fire this? So then the ocean god says that actually there's one mountain which falls right in the middle of the ocean. And in this mountain are lots of demons who will obstruct your path when you build this bridge all the way to Lanka. So he says, why don't you fire this arrow onto those people so that, they don't create an obstruction into your path. So then Lord Ram fires the arrow there, and then he destroys all the demons that are living on that mountain. So the reason I wanted to discuss these two pastimes is you can see the very stark contradiction between both pastimes. You can see that Vibhishana, when he offered his surrender onto the lotus feet of Lord Ram accepted it. But on the other hand, when Lord Ram tried to surrender onto the ocean god did not accept his surrender. So first example is one of a successful sharanagati or successful surrender, and the second example is one of an unsuccessful surrender. So what was it that made the second one unsuccessful and the first one successful? So the first aspect is that when Vibhishana sought shelter at the feet of Lord Ram, he did it through an intercessor. He did it through a medium. So who was the medium in this case? It was Sugriva. So he went and fell at Sugriva's feet, and Sugriva went and vouched for, he didn't vouch for him initially, but he at least conveyed his message to Lord Ram. Whereas when Lord Ram surrendered onto the ocean god, he did not do it directly. He did not do it through a medium or an intercessor. He did it directly. And that's why that surrender was unsuccessful. The second aspect is that whenever you're surrendering onto someone, you must feel completely helpless. So in Sharanagati, there's one statement which goes, Anukulasya sankalpa pratikulasya varjanam rakshishyati iti vishvaso goptritve varanam tatha. Goptritve varanam tatha means, goptritve varanam means that you should feel that apart from the person whom I'm surrendering to, no one else can protect me in this entire world. So when Vibhishana was surrendering onto Lord Ram, he felt completely helpless. But when Lord Ram was surrendering onto the ocean god, he didn't feel helpless. He thought, well, I have another option. If I need another option, I can destroy this whole ocean myself and I can do it. So that's the second reason why this Sharanagati was unsuccessful. The third reason why this Sharanagati was unsuccessful, or the difference, is that when Vibhishana surrendered onto Lord Ram was a worthy acceptor of Sharanagati. So whenever you're surrendering onto someone, that person needs to be worthy of accepting your surrender as well. You can't surrender onto someone who's not worthy of accepting your surrender or worthy of protecting you in the first place. Whereas when Lord Ram was surrendering onto the ocean god, what Lord Ram was showing that surrender onto the demigods is essentially fruitless. It does not yield any results and it will be unsuccessful in the end. That's why the ocean gods' surrender essentially became unsuccessful. So yeah, this whole pastime which occurs in the Yuddha Kanda occurs over 2 chapters. And this points out the most important aspect of Valmiki Ramayana, which is Sharanagati, or the process of surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So having said that, I will finish the pastimes here. Does anyone have any comments or any questions or anything you want me to clarify?
Small question?
Yes, please.
When you said that from this day, anyone who even presents themselves, looks in my direction, I will give protection always in all circumstances. Just to quite interest of Lord Nrsimhadev, we prayed for protection to Lord Nrsimhadev. So why aren't we also praying to Lord Rama for that protection? Like we have a bhajan in ISKCON, you know why we don't do that, we just go to Lord Rama.
Well,
that's sorry, it's not really, I'm not worried about an elaborate answer. Just that was my question that I thought of.
Yeah, no, that's...
It's not that important if someone else has another question that's more important.
No, that's a great question.
I mean, if it's off track, off the class,
No, it's not off track. It's an important point. But essentially, the whole idea is this verse that I quoted, Sakrudeva Prapannaya Tavasmiti Chayachate from Valmiki Ramayana, is quoted by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita as well. So, firstly, the most important point to understand is there's no difference between Lord Ram and Lord Krishna. So, whether we take shelter at the feet of Lord Ram or at the feet of Lord Krishna, Srila Prabhupada says our surrender will be successful anyways. But in terms of why the Gaudiya tradition does not go towards Lord Ram and we go more towards Lord Krishna, that's just a difference of rasa. Like, for example, in the Sri Vaishnava tradition, they are very much focused on the pastimes of Lord Ram. It's just the mood of the devotees that are there in the Sampradaya. The message of the Sampradayas essentially is the same, which is that we should surrender onto the lotus feet of the Lord, and Lord Ram or Lord Krishna will give us unconditional protection. But the deities to which we do it and the way in which we do it may differ across sampradayas. So, I mean, in Lord Chaitanya's Leela, we noticed that Murari Gupta was a devotee of Lord Ram, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had no problems with that. That's fine. So, some devotees may have a natural inclination towards Lord Ram, and Srila Prabhupada said that as long as they understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that's fine. They can seek shelter at the feet of Lord Ram as well. And actually, many devotees of Lord Ram find more fulfillment in Lord Chaitanya's mission than they do in any other mission, essentially. So this sort of, I can speak from personal experience, but also from experience of other devotees as well. So ultimately, we understand that Lord Krishna and Lord Rama are the same. So we seek shelter at their feet anyways. Anyone's shelter is fine. Thank you, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu?
If somebody comes to us to take shelter of us, I'm giving that shelter, and then after a while they start to behave like a rascal, or they start to have all sorts of problems. At some point, we need to ask them to leave.
Yeah, that's a good point. So this concept that I mentioned was one cited from Dharma, and we have to understand that the person who's giving shelter should also be capable of giving shelter. That's the other thing. In majority of our cases, normal people aren't really able to give protection to many people. What Srila Prabhupada does say in his purport in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, he says that, for example, limited shelter is important for all of us. Like, for example, the man in the family should give shelter to his wife and he should give shelter to his kids. And he should not abandon them at any point, essentially. So in our limited capacity, we are meant to give shelter to people. And if we notice that, for example, someone is trying to stab us in the back or something, and we're not capable of protecting ourselves, our general recommendation is, because we are not strong enough that we can protect ourselves, it's best that we don't offer protection to people whom we can't protect ourselves against. So it is okay to say no in the age of Kali, especially when you don't consider yourself worthy of shelter. Like, I'm just trying to think of a pastime in Valmiki Ramayana, and there is one instance where there was one devotee who surrendered onto the feet. Actually, there was one instance where there was a sage called Sharabhanga, and this Sharabhanga wanted to attain Vaikuntha. He wanted to go to Vaikuntha. He was about to leave his body in the forest, and he wanted to go to Vaikuntha. And at that point, Indra and Brahma were present in front of him. And then he says, I don't want to go to Indra Loka. I don't want to go to Brahma Loka. I want to go to Vaikuntha. So then at that point, Indra and Brahma, they both say, well, we don't have the power to send you to Vaikuntha. So they say, well, we're not going to give you Sharanagati. We're not going to accept your surrender then, because we don't have the power to fulfill your desires. So then after some time, Lord Ram walks in. And then when Lord Ram walks in, he says, I want to go to Vaikuntha. He says, sure, I'll send you to Vaikuntha. So then Lord Ram sends him to Vaikuntha. So we have to look at our ability as well. Like, if we are going to promise to someone that we are going to give them protection, then we need to stick up with it. But if we think that we are not capable of giving protection to someone, like for example, a guru and a disciple, like when the guru gives protection to his disciple, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's said that a disciple who never leaves his master is glorious. But even more glorious is a master who does not abandon his disciple. This is also mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So essentially, the master should also never abandon his disciple, and the master should be at a level where he will not reject his those who have surrendered onto him. So to answer your question, for us, we need to look at how much we are capable of offering surrender and protection. And if we can't offer protection, we should not offer protection. Yeah. Yes, Mataji? Hare Krishna.
Just in relation to that, I read a really beautiful story of Shri Tikiti the other day. Shri Prabhupada rang the bell at like 2 o'clock in the morning. And Shri Tikiti went in, and Prabhupada had his head immersed in one of his books. And he said, these books are so wonderful, they're so powerful, I'm wanting you to read my books. And so he left, so Shri Tikiti paid obeisances and then left. Anyway, the next day, Prabhupada rings the bell again. And he comes back, and he goes, yes, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada goes, these books are so wonderful, you just need, even if you read one page, I will be happy at this. So then, he pays the best and goes out again. So the next day, Prabhupada rings the bell again. Shruti comes in. He says, even if you read one purport of this book, I will be happy. So then the next day happens again. Prabhupada rings the bell, like 2 o'clock in the morning, Shri Tikiti comes back. Yes, Prabhupada says, even if you read one word, I will be happy.
Yeah.
So it was just sort of in the context of the whole thing, just by pleasing the Lord, or understanding the potency of the Lord through the books, or the potency of the spiritual master.
Yes,
That was a really great little story.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, it's said that mercy is like an ocean, but we can only drink a drop. And even that drop will be more than satisfying for all of us. Thank you, Mataji. Yes, Prabhu. Ravana killed his whole... Oh, you mean like he sent everyone into battle beforehand? Yeah, because he didn't... I mean, there were a few reasons why he didn't go into battle initially. Firstly, he did not want to... Especially what his ministers told him was... They all told him that if you go into battle, you will be giving Ram too much importance. Like, you know how when Srila Prabhupada was sometimes asked about Vivekananda and Ramakrishna, Prabhupada would say, I don't know who these people are. Like, even though he knew who they were, he just said, I don't want to give them any importance. So that's what his ministers, including Prahasta and his son Indrajit, all of them told him that if he goes into battle, he will be giving Ram too much importance. Ram is nothing but an ordinary mortal. He's just a human. Why are you the master of the 3 worlds? You're the master of all the demons. You're the most powerful. You've received so many benedictions from Lord Shiva. Why do you have to go and battle an ordinary man who's been exiled by his own men?
So that's why, that was one of the reasons why he wasn't going into battle initially, and he was just sending his sons, his brothers, etc. He was sending everyone. And then when he essentially loses everything, at that point, Ravana's grandfather, not grandfather, sorry, his senior minister, Prahasta, he tells him, now that you have lost everything, actually Ravana wanted to run away after that. Like when he lost everything, he wanted to run away. He was a coward as well. So then at that point, Prahasta brings him back and he says, don't be a coward. He says, for you, all your brothers, all your sons, all your ministers, everyone has laid down their life. So now, essentially, have some guts, go and fight Lord Ram. So then he goes and then he fights Lord Ram and then he gets killed straight away. Like, there's not even a huge battle. It's described in like less than half a chapter, the battle. In TV serials and in movies, they show the battle going on and on and on, but actually it wasn't that big. Lord Ram just cut his head. Yeah, so yeah, it was pretty funny. Thank you, Prabhu. Any other questions? Yes, Prabhu. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, it's there in the Valmiki Ramayana as well. Lord Ram recites that. Yes. Mother, do you have a question? Yeah, that's a good point. So on one hand, I mentioned that all you have to do is just look in the direction of Lord Ram and he will give protection. And on the other hand, I was saying that, you have to be in the proper consciousness for that surrender to be successful. So the best explanation for this is the Sankirtan movement. Like, that's the best way I can explain it. So for example, when we go out on the street and you chant Hare Krishna, and someone hears Hare Krishna, and then they also, all they do is they just smile or they dance or they lift their hands or they make some kind of favorable gesture. As soon as they do that, all of their sins are destroyed. Srila Prabhupada mentioned that. And he says that, this person is now on the road back to Godhead. So the journey back to Godhead has started, although it's in a rudimentary form. So essentially what will happen is now you have accumulated some kind of spiritual piety. This is known as Sukriti. So now that you have attained spiritual piety, what will happen is over time, this spiritual piety will purify you and you will at one point surrender unto the Lord with a favorable consciousness. As soon as you surrender unto the Lord with favorable consciousness, that's almost like, having a seed that you've planted in the ground, and then the seed just starts to germinate. And when the seed starts to germinate, what's the condition required for the seed to start germinating? That's the favorable consciousness. But to plant the seed itself, you don't need any kind of qualification. All you need to do is just look in the direction of Lord Ram, and then he will help you. Now, if you look at it in the grand scheme of things, we've been away from Lord Ram for millions and millions of lifetimes. So I don't know how many lifetimes it will take for us to go back to him, and that's up to us. So it's not that everything is in his hands. He's saying that, all you can do is you can say that the entrance into the school is free. You don't have to pay any fees to attend the school, but you still have to come to the school if you want to graduate. So it's the same thing. So yes, mercy will be given to you initially, even if you're not favorable, but if you become favorable eventually, then you will reap the benefits of the mercy, essentially. Yeah, does that make sense? Okay, Hare Krishna. You had a question as well, Prabhu? No? That's it. Any others? Okay, Srila Ramachandra Bhagwan ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.